The baby was about to fall asleep when a monster suddenly appeared out of nowhere and moved to attack. Unfortunately, this was no ordinary baby. With just a single glare, the demon self-destructed. In his previous life, he was one of the most powerful warriors ever. But now he has been reincarnated as a child in a fantasy world and the last hope of this world. The story begins in the year 1542, high at Hakone Pass in the mountains above the clouds. Something unsettling was taking place. In a hidden area, children were tied upside down in the lotus position and suspended over blazing flames, slowly being burned alive. Nearby, several observers watched without emotion, casually complaining that this year's children were worthless. Then something unusual caught their attention. One of the boys hanging over the fire showed no signs of panic. He remained completely calm. Not only did he survive the ordeal, but he also demonstrated clear talent in fire release. That same boy would later become a deadly killer at a shockingly young age, eliminating numerous other ninjas as part of brutal trials. The onlookers were impressed. The boy had already mastered every known human ninja art at such a young age. An elderly man who witnessed the test smiled confidently, declaring that the child would one day lead the clan. By 1546, during the night battle of Kawagoe, the battlefield was soaked in blood. In that era, there were warriors who lived in the shadows of history, born only to die silently. From birth, they were raised as prodigies and trained relentlessly in forbidden assassination ninjutsu. These warriors were known by many names, including Kusa or grass, Rappa meaning disorderly, or Hamari. Above the chaos, a bird flew freely before landing atop a massive building, silently observing the carnage below. Inside that structure, 3 ninjas knelt before their leader. The man praised their recent surprise attack, calling it magnificent, and announced that their lordship was pleased with the overwhelming victory. This man was Hojo Jinin. He explained that their lord would reward them with stipends and supplies, expressing high expectations for their future performance. His true focus, however, is the ninja in the middle, our protagonist Fuma Kotaro V. The response is simple and obedient. After dismissing them, the 3 ninjas vanished instantly. Moments later, another figure stepped out from the shadows behind Hojo, warning him not to place too much trust in them. The Fuma clan, even among ninjas, were different. Their strength was forged through savage training that bordered on madness. The battlefield they left behind was nothing more than a heap of unrecognizable corpses. Their ninjutsu had surpassed ordinary techniques. Hojo Jinin chuckles while dismissing the concern. The Fuma clan followed an absolute rule: eternal loyalty to the Hojo clan. Any violation meant immediate death. The clan was bound together by iron chains of loyalty. With a quiet laugh, he referred to them as wretched beings and convenient tools. By 1579, during the Battle of Kisagawa, an army charged forward with the goal of killing the enemy general. Yet upon reaching their target, they found only a single child standing there. The general halted in confusion, unable to understand why a child stood alone on a battlefield. The boy calmly raised a hand to his mask and slowly removed it. Then he opens his mouth, his teeth clenching, and sparks of flame erupt outward. Fire engulfed his entire body, like a living inferno. This was no ordinary attack but a fire transformation. The flames spread rapidly, consuming everything nearby. He was not alone. Beneath the sand, others had been waiting. The fiery eruption served as their signal. As they emerged, the enemy army found itself surrounded by a group of terrifying young ninjas. They did not appear as children, but as demons risen from hell. Before the enemy commander could react, the protagonist appeared behind him and crushed his head effortlessly. It was not a battle, but a massacre. Killing was everything. Each life taken meant survival. Our protagonist keeps following this path as if it is his ninja way. Eventually, time catches up with him. By 1613, at 80 years old, shackled, bloodied, and missing a leg, the once feared warrior was paraded through the streets. Villagers stared and whispered, calling him a monster and a demon. That year, Fuma Kotaro was finally captured by the Edo shogunate, the samurai. The Hojo clan, whom the Fuma had served for generations, had fallen to Toyotomi Hideyoshi during the siege of Odawara. Their hidden village was destroyed. Before execution by decapitation, a final question was asked regarding any last words. None were given. The executioner mocked the fallen legend, claiming that even Fuma Kotaro could not overcome overwhelming numbers and remarking that the Koga and Iga still had their uses. The comment provokes a chilling glare. Despite his old age, his killing intent remains sharp. Fuma Kotaro showed no further reaction. At that age, the ending no longer mattered. Deep inside, he questions why his life has stretched on for so long. Death has never been something he fears. So what force keeps him breathing all this time? When his gaze drifts upward and catches sight of a bird, recognizing the bird as a master kite, he wonders how long the creature will live and whether living as freely as it does is ever possible for him. The word freedom stirs something buried deep in his heart. Since childhood, that has always been the dream. Years pass, yet true freedom never comes within reach. Then, in a single instant, his head separates from his body. His eyes remain open as it happens. Out of nowhere, a gigantic crimson finger, as if stretching out from the gates of hell, presses against his forehead. A dark, chilling voice declares that he has been chosen. It claims to be the entity that witnesses the world through all things. A glow begins to shine. The voice proclaims that life will begin again. Everything fades into darkness. When awareness slowly returns, our protagonist opens his eyes to see small infant hands. He doesn't know where he is, and at the same time he feels suffocated. Acting on instinct, he activates his fire transformation ninjutsu. Flames erupt violently, bursting outward. Apparently he has been inside a dragon the entire time. Our protagonist is reborn as a baby, and the confusion overwhelms him. The world surrounding him is completely unfamiliar. Floating islands drift in the sky, and bizarre, otherworldly sights fill the horizon. The dragon he just destroys plummets downward, crashing directly into a castle built atop a colossal tree, utterly demolishing it. Our protagonist's small figure lands on top of the dragon. Looking up, Kotaro spots a creature approaching. Appearing before him is a goblin. The baby protagonist is surprised to see demons for the first time. The strangest part is that they are winged creatures he identifies as flying lizards. Then he smiles. After piecing things together, he realizes that he has been reincarnated. Going back in time to the moment our protagonist killed the dragon, someone happens to observe everything from below. At first she shows no reaction, but the moment she sees a baby bursting out of a dragon, her eyes widen in shock. Meanwhile, our boy savors his first taste of freedom. The narrative shifts as some context about this world is revealed. The hero Arslad defeated the Demon Lord nearly 100 years ago. He and his party were known as the Four Great Heroes, their names etched into legend. However, as time passed, another Demon King emerged. Unfortunately, this new Demon King and his race became several times stronger. Humanity began losing territories, and any land conquered by demons automatically became part of the demon realm. Speaking of which, a demon appears from the smoke and debris. The colossal goblin is the Goblin King, and he is currently stepping on the head of our protagonist. Anyways, the Goblin King expresses confusion as he tries to piece together how a human child managed to burst out of a dragon. Kicking our protagonist aside, he calls humans a bunch of weak and pathetic creatures. Our protagonist suffers no damage from the kick, leaving him confused. Just then, the Goblin King's subordinate walks up and informs their king that the sky castle of the goblins has been completely destroyed. The rest respond with one voice, cheering that the destruction of their castle is unforgivable. Following the desires of his subjects, the Goblin King moves to end our protagonist as a way to vent their anger. With their cheers as encouragement, he swings his massive sword with full force. The moment the blade lands, the ground cracks. The rest of the goblins grow excited, thinking our protagonist has been killed. But when the dust settles, our protagonist sidesteps the attack just in the nick of time. He is left momentarily stunned, thinking that was a close call. Puzzled, the Goblin King wonders how our protagonist dodged the attack when he is only a baby. Our protagonist shares the same thought. Babies have underdeveloped bones, making it difficult for them to move properly. But unfortunately for them, he is not a regular baby. Our protagonist manages to stand and thinks that much he can do. The goblins look on in shock. Anyone would question seeing a baby stand without support. But in the next moment, our protagonist vanishes. Appearing behind the Goblin King, he breaks his neck with a violent twist. Using his signature move, he unleashes his fire ninjutsu. Borrowing the surrounding flames, the Goblin King's body bursts into fire. At the same time, our protagonist intensifies the flames, burning the Goblin King to a crisp. Before the rest of the goblins can respond, they are struck by the attack as well, all while wondering how a baby could wield such mastery over high-level fire magic. Before we discover what happens next, the scene changes to a different perspective of the Sky Castle. A long staircase leads to the top of the Sky Castle. The same mysterious figure from before comes into view. As she walks to the top, her thoughts are revealed. She remembers that this used to be the territory of the elf race. She came here because she suspected our protagonist had landed in the Sky Castle together with the dragon. But upon reaching the top, she is stunned for a moment. Seeing the scattered corpses of goblins, she tries to understand what happened. Then, in the next second, she sees the person responsible for the massacre. Exhausted from the fight, our protagonist has fallen asleep. She approaches slowly, observing him and wondering if he truly did all this. Turning back her hood, she reveals herself to be a female elf. At the same time, she says that she has finally found him and calls our protagonist the last hope of humanity. Her true identity is Hyrie Titania, one of the 4 heroes from legend. In the next chapter, our protagonist sees a glimpse of his memories. His parents were killed, and his village was attacked, leaving him the sole survivor. The Fuma clan ninjas responsible for the massacre were surprised that he survived the inferno and instantly labeled him a prodigy. At the same time, our protagonist slowly wakes up, surprised and wondering why he is seeing memories from his past life. Hyrie realizes that he is finally awake. Meanwhile, our protagonist wonders about her identity. Seeing those pointed elf ears, he realizes that she is a resident of this world. Hyrie, on the other hand, gently sets him aside. Addressing our protagonist by name, she formally introduces herself. Kotaro is surprised and naturally wonders how she knows his name. As if reading his thoughts, Titania apologizes and explains that she took the liberty of going through his memories without permission, leaving our boy stunned and wondering what kind of technique that is. Putting that aside, she humbly asks for permission to stay by his side. She believes he may experience some inconvenience as a baby and offers to help. Our protagonist remains silent for a moment after hearing this. Her idea of helping makes him question her motives. Regardless, if she tries anything foolish, he will simply kill her. Since he is new to this world and limited by his baby body, relying on her for now might not be a bad idea. Putting on the brightest smile he can manage, he agrees. That cheerful smile could melt anyone's heart. As if on cue, Titania grabs him tightly, expressing her excitement that he accepted her offer. But she soon realizes she is suffocating our protagonist with her twin peaks. Because of this, she quickly apologizes, saying she got overly excited because of his adorable smile. Meanwhile, our protagonist takes a moment to process what is happening. This is the first time he has seen someone genuinely happy to help him. In addition, her eyes show no sign of killing intent or deception. Still, he refuses to let his guard down. From experience, he knows kindness can sometimes be an act, and eventually their goal might be to make him their dog. In this life, his only goal is to obtain freedom. With that thought, he suddenly falls asleep. Hyrie realizes that he must have overexerted himself. Meanwhile, our protagonist can only blame his small body since he gets tired easily. Still, after entering this world, he feels relaxed and free. To put it simply, he cannot remember the last time he slept peacefully in his previous life. His past life was filled with constant fighting, and the only gazes directed at him were filled with killing intent. He had to keep fighting just to survive. But now he is resting peacefully, and Hyrie gently urges him to sleep well. In addition, she promises that he will never have to be alone again. You see, the moment she found our protagonist, the first thing she did was use a memory reading spell to understand what happened. By doing this, she unintentionally saw memories from our protagonist's previous life. She could not believe the hardships he had to endure at such a young age. Even while resting, he had to keep one eye open just in case. Furthermore, she saw the countless people he killed just to survive. She also witnessed his brutal death, and finally saw what happened to the unfortunate goblins earlier. Even as a baby, our protagonist still carries the same sharp killing intent, and even after the fight, he never truly let his guard down. At this point, Titania feels truly sad and even sheds a tear for him. To suppress one's emotions for an entire lifetime, this makes her fear ninjas. With just one wrong step, they could easily fall and become no different from demons. However, Kotaro is different. Despite sealing away his emotions, he never lost hope. Because of this, she remembers her old companions and believes without a doubt that our protagonist is qualified to become the hero of their world. So in this life, she wants him to relax, enjoy life, and learn to express love, because now he is no longer alone. Suddenly, the Goblin King from before appears. Apparently, he did not die. He cannot believe that a human, not to mention a baby, managed to do this to the great goblin demon. Because of this, he moves to finish our protagonist. But in that instant, our protagonist's eyes suddenly snap open. With a single wave of his tiny hand, the Goblin King is instantly obliterated. Sensing something strange, Hyrie turns back. However, she becomes puzzled when she sees nothing there. Our protagonist's strike was so powerful that it destroyed even the distant mountains. With that done, he calmly returns to sleep. At the same time, Hyrie Titania realizes that they are being watched by a demon. Because of this, she activates a wind spell, instantly killing the winged demons spying on them. Now that they have been spotted, she knows their location has been compromised. It is time for her to leave the demon realm with Kotaro. Thankfully, the quickest path out of the demon realm leads through the elf realm. But unfortunately, that means passing through the dangerous Great Redwood Forest. Meanwhile, in another location within the demon realm, a secret meeting is taking place. A subordinate of the Demon King reports Hyrie Titania's location and confirms that the Fairy King has also been found. The gaunt-eyed figure, presumably the Demon King, finds the news intriguing. One of the Demon Lord's commanders is surprised that she is still alive. However, they initially conclude that the report is useless, considering Hyrie has already lost her powers. Still, the demon continues his report saying the real concern is the baby she is carrying. He then shows footage of our protagonist's fight with the Goblin King. The demons fall into stunned silence the moment they see our protagonist's eyes. They immediately realize that the baby is far from ordinary. Addressing the room, the Demon Lord finally speaks. He orders them to inform the Fairy King about the baby. He wants Hyrie Titania killed, but he wants our protagonist captured alive. With that, the meeting ends. Back to Hyrie, she is currently running while being chased by a giant bug. Actually, scratch that, not just one, but many. Meanwhile, our protagonist becomes excited, seeing such huge bugs for the first time. Hyrie now has to hold him carefully while running so he does not fall. Since they are outnumbered, their only option is to flee. But while running, she notices multiple winged monsters approaching. In response, she uses Grand Wind Rupture. The powerful spell slices all the monsters into pieces. Our protagonist is surprised. He notices that Hyrie is using something similar to ninjutsu. While she is clearly skilled, our protagonist senses a problem. The waves of monsters seem endless. Hyrie can only grit her teeth in annoyance. Because of this, she begins wishing she hadn't lost her power. Contrary to her tense expression, our protagonist seems to be having a blast. But then he notices something off. Tiny winged creatures suddenly appear between them and the monster. Upon closer look, they turn out to be fairies, putting on their most charming smiles. They ask what the monster is doing, informing it that the prey, our protagonist and Hyrie, belong to them. The monster takes one look at them before bolting off as if its life depends on it. Now our protagonist watches, confused. Turning to Hyrie, the fairies are surprised that she dared to set foot in this place. But in the next moment, they reveal their true demonic nature while calling Hyrie a filthy elf. However, Hyrie isn't too surprised. She expected this much, and mentally notes that this path cannot be avoided. As for our protagonist, he is surprisingly in a cheerful mood to have encountered yet another creature. Anyways, the demon fairies are irritated at seeing Hyrie. They plan to devour her and demand that she hand over our protagonist, but before they can react, they are suddenly grabbed in their sensitive areas. As for the one responsible, it's our protagonist. At this point, his sensitivity to danger is at zero. Meanwhile, Hyrie is stunned and doesn't understand how he managed to leave her arm. She is about to warn him that this group of fairies is extremely vicious and that he shouldn't provoke them. However, seeing how excited he looks, together with his adorable smile, she freezes with joy. Our protagonist's mood seems to be contagious. Meanwhile, the rest of the fairies become irritated seeing this. In response, they prepare poison spikes from their mouths. Seeing this, Hyrie Titania is in the process of warning our protagonist, but it is already too late. Multiple spikes have been shot straight at him. Moving quickly, our protagonist catches all the spikes in a single motion. Seeing this, the fairies are left in shock. Turning serious, his eyes flash with killing intent. Our protagonist sends the spikes back to their senders. Each fairy is stabbed by the poison spikes. With that, they fall like insects that have been exterminated. One wonders how it is even possible for a human child to move like that. Meanwhile, Our protagonist thinks to himself that he can't resist the urge to react whenever someone tries to kill him. Now his good mood is completely ruined, and once again he begins feeling sleepy. Suddenly, a massive spike is sent his way. Moving by instinct, Hyrie saves him. Our protagonist is stunned for a moment, not because of the attack, but likely because this is the first time someone has put themselves in danger just to save him. Hyrie, in the process of saving him, suffers an injury to her back. Since the spike contains paralyzing poison, she finds herself unable to move. Seeing this, one of the surviving fairies lets out a mocking laugh, because their mother has arrived. The mother not only looks like a mature version of the fairies, but also several times more dangerous. She too recognizes Hyrie and expresses surprise that she came here of her own accord. In response, Hyrie mutters Elva's name. Elva tells Hyrie to hand over the protagonist, adding that Hyrie must die by her hands in order for Elva to be recognized as one of the 10 demons. Hyrie, on the other hand, can hardly believe what she is hearing and is about to ask why. But Elva silences her by pulling a grotesque spear from her mouth. She launches an attack, telling Hyrie that she will no longer take orders from an elf. Hyrie manages to dodge and grits her teeth while holding the protagonist. Seeing this, Elva expresses a bit of surprise that Hyrie can still move despite being poisoned. However, she decides to increase the concentration of the poison and finish her off, struggling to stand despite her current situation. Hyrie swears that she will never hand over the protagonist under any circumstances. Hearing this, the protagonist silently observes her determined yet firm expression. In response, Elva tells her to die while unleashing an attack called Fairy King Grand Dance. Multiple destructive attacks are launched as Elva charges toward Hyrie. However, she is stopped midway by a small finger, leaving her in shock. Hyrie, already aware of the protagonist's strength, is still taken by surprise seeing him stop Elva's devastating attack with just a finger. Meanwhile, Kotaro admits to having a strange feeling he does not understand. This is the first time he feels the need to protect someone other than himself. Elva is shocked that he stopped her attack with just a finger. Now she begins to understand why the Demon King wanted the protagonist. Meanwhile, Kotaro thinks to himself that he is constantly limited because of his body. Regardless, there is still one technique that could work. Waving his finger, he activates a ninjutsu called Finger Sever. Immediately, Elva's body is severed in multiple places by an invisible attack. She groans in pain, demanding to know what the protagonist did to her. Meanwhile, the protagonist's small hand noticeably trembles after using the attack. But suddenly Hyrie stops him, thinking he plans to attack again. She insists that the protagonist spare Elva. Seeing this, Elva asks what Hyrie is playing at. Hyrie replies that she wants to save her. The protagonist seems confused by this explanation. After all, he is not the type to show mercy after being attacked first. Because of this, Hyrie explains that the elves and fairies once lived together in the same forest. She continues, saying that back then this place was called the Forest of the Giant Trees and was bountiful. In addition, the elves and fairies formed an alliance that helped grow and protect the forest. Since the elves were superior in intellect, they governed the forest, while the fairies, with their numbers and combat ability, protected it from threats. Because of this arrangement, her people used the fairies since they were considered inferior in both intellect and civilization, being used again and again. The two races that should have shared mutual understanding instead accumulated years of disdain and hatred toward her people. In the end, war became inevitable. Hyrie admits that at that time she was young and powerless to do anything. The protagonist understands, as the same thing happens in his own world. From experience, he knows what it feels like to constantly be used. Still, Hyrie had such a strong conviction at a young age. But the moment she reveals that the war happened over 150 years ago, the protagonist is shocked. He had always thought Hyrie was a girl in her 20s, but she is actually much older than him. Elva interrupts while undergoing some kind of transformation, saying that history rots her ears. She laughs, thinking the earlier poison must have already circulated through Hyrie's entire body. Still undergoing her transformation, she tells Hyrie that the only way to alleviate the regret of the fairies is by killing her. In response, Hyrie tells her to stop, insisting that continued conflict is meaningless and will eventually destroy her. Elva shouts at her to shut up, adding that this is her mission. She explains that she too was once like Hyrie, a powerless princess who could do nothing. But this time, she swears to kill her to avenge the fairies. Meanwhile, Hyrie notices the magic seal visible on Elva's neck. She recognizes it as a contract seal, and a chilling thought surfaces in her heart. Elva confirms it, saying Hyri would likely do the same in her place before revealing that this is the power bestowed upon her by the Demon King. A flashback to the past shows that Elva and Hyri once knew each other. At that time, Hyri asked her friend why conflicts never seemed to end. Humans, demons, and the beast race were always fighting, and every race seemed to be in constant conflict. Because of this, Hyri feared for the future between their races. In response, Elva reassured her friend not to worry. Regardless of the circumstances, she reminded Hyri that they were friends, and the kind of conflict Hyri feared between the fairies and elves would never happen. Hyri seemed stunned at first before showing a smile at this reassurance. Back in the present, and now fully transformed, Elva comments about the overwhelming power she possesses, adding that this is the power bestowed upon her by the Demon King, and now it was time for Hyri to die. Meanwhile, Hyri feels both annoyed and pitiful toward her friend. Around Hyri's neck is an amulet. She notes that she had been saving it for a particular occasion, but for Elva's sake, she has no choice but to use it. Meanwhile, Elva mistakes Hyri's contemplative state as fear that has left her unable to speak. With that, she rushes forward with an attack called Fairy King Grand Dance, Crucifix. She laughs, thinking to herself that she must have crushed Hyri. But when the dust settles, she finds a golden sphere at the center of her attack. Within the magical sphere, the protagonist watches Hyri as wings suddenly appear on her back out of nowhere. Meanwhile, Elva is both shocked and puzzled by the enormous amount of magical energy radiating from Hyri. This was supposed to be impossible, considering that Hyri should have lost her powers. Meanwhile, Hyri, now in her sage mode, begins casting buff spells. First, she removes all debuffs, followed by stamina recovery. With that, her injuries begin to heal at a visible and astonishing rate. Meanwhile, the protagonist, feeling the recovery effect of the magic, wonders what kind of ninjutsu this could be. At the same time, Elva begins to realize what is happening, but still finds it impossible to believe. Hyri has returned to her prime, the same power she once had when she faced the previous Demon King alongside the hero. Still, Hyri continues magnifying her power. Once it is enough, she points straight at Elva and declares that she will save her. She chants a spell called Freezing Sacred Stigmata, and just like that, Elva reverts to her original form. Seeing this, Hyri tells her that she is no longer bound and wants her friend to see beyond the regrets of their people. When she reminds Elva that they were once friends, Elva becomes emotional. She realizes that Hyri still remembers something from over 100 years ago. Out of spite, and because the fairies lost the war against the elves, she went to the demons. At that time, she had been easily swayed by their words. Pulling herself together, she suddenly notices the protagonist approaching her. Just as things seem to be settling down, Elva is suddenly crushed by the appearance of another demon. The protagonist is left stunned as the newly appeared demon lets out a mocking laugh. She scoffs, saying that Elva ending up like this after making a contract with the Demon King is truly pathetic. She says the best feeling is watching someone writhe in agony beneath her feet. She says this while stepping on the agonizing Elva. The demon turns out to be one of the 10 demons, Apru. Because of this, Hyri erupts in rage, ignoring her. Apru turns to Elva and continues crushing her beneath her foot. She comments that not only is Elva's transformation unstable, but the contract seal is also going haywire. It seems Elva could not handle it after all. Hyri becomes even more enraged. Next, she activates 2 magic spells. First, she uses magic transfer to pull Elva and the protagonist out of harm's way. Then she unleashes the highest rank fire magic, Karmic Inferno Annihilation. The magic is high rank for a reason. More than half of the forest is incinerated. Meanwhile, Hyri uses the opportunity to catch her breath. Once the dust settles, Apru appears completely unharmed after the high-rank spell. She even complains about being suddenly attacked and that her outfit is now covered in dirt. Hyri breaks into a cold sweat seeing this. She never imagined her strongest fire spell would not leave even a scratch. Apru becomes furious and launches herself forward. Hyri reacts by using barrier magic. Immediately they are surrounded and covered with massive boulders. Apru sees this attempt and calls it useless. She then launches several punches that destroy the boulders. Unaware, Hyri had just baited her to come closer. Now Hyri uses the same magic she used on Elva to try to remove the Demon King's contract seal from Apru. But for some reason, it does not work. Apru acknowledges the attempt but adds that Hyri is far from the monster she once was when she was the strongest elf and the great sage. After that failed attempt, Hyri's power begins to deplete rapidly. Meanwhile, Apru calls it a letdown. Even if Hyri is not as strong as before, she was still expecting more. It is just unfortunate that Hyri's sealed power was only temporary, but it does not really matter since Hyri is about to die. With a mischievous smile, Apru decides to reveal something interesting about Elva before Hyri dies. Apparently, it has to do with the time Elva came crawling to the Demon Lord for help. Elva was asked whether she felt regret and humiliation for her fallen comrades. In addition to the rage inside her, Apru insisted that Elva should let those dark emotions consume her. Only then would the Demon Lord be pleased and grant her power. But now Apru bursts into laughter, calling Elva as dumb as a bug. The Demon Lord only intended to use them as pawns. Since the fairies were numerous, they were easy to exploit. It is no wonder the elves used them again and again. The fairies were simply easy to manipulate. Hyri curses Apru for using her friend. In response, Apru tells Hyri that the expression she just made makes her want to kill her. Hearing the word kill is enough for our protagonist to swear that he will make Apru wish she had died as a child. Seeing her expression, the demon laughs. While playfully preparing her attack, she announces her intent to kill and even permits Hyri to scream. With that said, she launches several demonic explosive fists without holding back. But the protagonist intervenes. He blocks all the attacks, leaving the demon stunned. Amidst her confusion, the protagonist's eyes glow with killing intent as he activates another ninjutsu called Redirection. In an instant, the demon is obliterated. The protagonist explains that redirection is a fundamental taijutsu technique that temporarily stores the received force in the body before releasing it. Meanwhile, Hyri watches in stunned amazement. At the same time, the protagonist reflects on himself. Killing had always been everything to him, even a means of survival. He had even killed his own emotions simply because that was the only way to survive as a ninja. But now he feels another strange emotion, different from the moment when he wanted to protect Hyri. Perhaps it is because he was once in the same position as Elva. The protagonist realizes, with tears in his eyes, that he is experiencing human emotions again. Affection, compassion, sadness, and grief all returning at once. Meanwhile, the demon struggles to move. She wonders what kind of technique the protagonist used, considering she is supposed to be protected by the Demon Lord's contract seal. Speaking of the Demon Lord's contract seals, Hyri begins to think. She believes the protagonist's ninjutsu comes from another dimension, and perhaps this allows his technique to ignore the contract's defenses. Since her previous attack failed, she realizes in shock that the protagonist's ninjutsu may be the natural and best counter against demons. The demon seems to think the same while commenting that it was not bad. She then uses a recovery spell to regenerate her entire body. Making a lovesick expression, she expresses interest in the protagonist. She comments on his eyes, saying they show that he has killed countless people. In addition, they reveal sadness, despair, loneliness, and hatred, basically all dark emotions. All of these attributes are perfect for becoming a demon. She proclaims that the protagonist is destined to be on their side and offers him an invitation to join them so they can rule the world together. Kotaro thinks to himself that this is just like Earth, where the strong constantly try to dominate the weak. In truth, he is fed up, so in response to her invitation, he sticks out his tongue, indicating that he has no interest. Seeing this, the demon bursts into laughter. She then activates her full power, and her muscles grow massively in size. She intends to partially cripple the protagonist so she can take him to the demons. Hyri begins to panic upon seeing this. Apparently, it is only now that she realizes the demon they are facing is one of the 10 demons. As the demon moves to attack, Hyri thinks to herself that no matter how strong the protagonist is, there must be a limit to what he can handle. Because of this, she shouts and tells him to run, but the protagonist is so overpowered that he easily stops the demon's full-force attack. The ground cracks beneath his feet. Now the demon is left in utter shock and disbelief for the second time. At the same time, the protagonist uses redirection, and the demon explodes into pieces. Seeing this, Hyri's mouth hangs open in complete disbelief. A wave of exhaustion hits the protagonist, and Hyri quickly moves to catch him before he falls. She thanks him for saving them and assures him that he can rest now. With that, the protagonist falls asleep. Watching this, Elva chuckles weakly. She comments on the protagonist's incredible strength. To obliterate one of the 10 demons with a single move was something she never imagined. Hyrai is shocked that Elva is still alive and wants to heal her. But Elva tells her there is no need. Now that she has lost the Demon Lord's contract, her body will naturally decay. In a moment of reflection, she realizes that she made the same mistake as her people. She was simply too greedy and tried to obtain more than she deserved. Now she insists that Hyrai leave immediately, because she and April failed. The Demon King will send more demons and will do anything to obtain the protagonist. In addition, she gives Hyrai a parting gift. The gift is an S-rank equipment called the Fairy Boots. It increases movement speed by 3 times, and in some cases even allows levitation to avoid detection. Hyrai immediately feels the effect of the boots. It almost feels as if she is weightless. Elva also suggests heading east of the forest if Hyrai has nowhere else to go. Beyond the Warlord Mountains lies Hydrat. It is the only place that constantly resists the Demon Realm's invasion. It is basically the last stronghold against the demons. Since they are always looking for strong people, Elva begins to say something about the protagonist. But Hyrai interrupts her mid-sentence, insisting that she has the wrong idea. She explains that the protagonist considers her a friend, and she feels the same way, just like they once were over 100 years ago. In addition, Hyrai promises to make their childhood dream a reality and create a peaceful world for both the fairies and elves. This makes Elva reflect on the past. In her final moments, she smiles and looks forward to the day that dream becomes real. Once Elva fully disintegrates, Hyrai quietly tells her to rest well. The next scene takes place somewhere else within the forest. A fragment of April lands on the ground. The moment it touches the ground, she regenerates completely. Even she cannot believe she survived, but she later realizes it is thanks to the Demon Lord's contract seal that saved her. Even worse, she still cannot understand how the protagonist managed to stop her most powerful attack with such ease. But in the next second, the Demon King speaks, expressing his disappointment and making her panic. She immediately begs for mercy as the seal begins to suffocate her. The Demon King expresses regret for saving her after her clan was wiped out by humans and granting her power. As the seal tightens, she begs the Demon King for a second chance. However, the Demon Lord is done with the ogres, calling them a lower species and wondering why he ever expected much from her. And just like that, she is suffocated to death. Meanwhile, another demon has been observing everything that happened. Emerging from the trees, Azras, one of the 10 demons, thinks it might as well seize this opportunity and take all the credit. In the next scene, Hyrai could see the path ahead leading toward Hydrat. Finally, they arrived at their destination. Only then did she finally catch her breath. Meanwhile, our protagonist slowly opens his eyes. Hyrai informs him that they have arrived at the Warlord Mountains. She also reveals that this is the same place where the previous hero battled the former Demon King, and even now, the battle against the demons continues. The royal capital of Hydrat is the only place that hasn't been influenced by the demons. As she explains this, she thinks about her former companion and realizes that our protagonist is the one they desperately need. An explosion erupts on the battlefield, and more demons suddenly appear. One demon wonders aloud why, no matter how many enemies they kill, the humans just keep coming. In response, a human knight steps forward, saying that was his line. In the middle of the battle, a priest aids and heals a fallen knight. The fallen knight insists they hold on a little longer, knowing reinforcements will arrive soon. Because of this, the remaining demons switch their focus to the priest. If she is taken out, no one can heal the knights. In an instant, they are sliced like butter. The figure responsible seems to be the reinforcements who casually solo all the demons. Coincidentally, this happens to be Hyrai's party member. Mira Barbados, a beast lady and one of the 4 heroes, complains about the stench of the demons, saying she can't stand it. She vows to kill every last one. Seeing this, the demon from before begins to tremble. Not because she is a former hero, but because her alias is known as the Goddess of War. In the blink of an eye, Mira kills the remaining demons, proving that her name is no empty title. At the same time, Hyrai is heading with our protagonist toward the city. Meanwhile, Mira catches the scent of blood. The smell is so thick that she admits she hasn't sensed anything like it before. It's almost as if the smell clings to a person's very soul. Because of this, she naturally assumes the figure must be a demon. She leaps and appears in front of Hyrai, stopping her blade inches away when she realizes it is her. Mira expresses genuine surprise, wondering what brings Hyrai to the battlefield. At the same time, Azras appears from atop a rock. He observes the scene, commenting that he was correct. Hyri has really fled to the Warlord Mountains, and notes that this place is the ideal battlefield for him. In addition, he acknowledges that our protagonist cannot be underestimated. He plans to use this opportunity to wipe them all out in an instant. We cut back to Miria, who is about to ask what Hyri is doing here when her eyes suddenly land on our protagonist. Puzzled, she turns toward Hyri, clearly about to ask where this baby came from. But before she can even finish the thought, our protagonist suddenly vanishes, only to reappear right on top of her head, grabbing onto her ears. Unfortunately for him, he has no idea that those ears are one of her most sensitive spots. Meanwhile, our protagonist is absolutely thrilled. After all, seeing humans with cat ears is something straight out of fantasy. Sadly for him, the ride doesn't last long. Miria quickly grabs him and tosses him straight to the ground in pure frustration. The moment she declares that she's going to kill him, Hyri immediately jumps in and begs her to stop. But before things can escalate any further, the battlefield suddenly erupts with multiple explosions, drawing everyone's attention. Cracks spread across the ground, and from those cracks, massive pillars begin to rise, pillars made entirely from the bones of the fallen. The group can only stare in confusion as the horrifying structures continue to rise. Of course, this is all Azra's doing. He calmly explains that the Warlord Mountains have been locked in war for many years, which means there are tens of thousands of corpses buried beneath the battlefield, and every single one of them now belongs to him. With that, he casts his necromancy spell and sends the towering pillars of corpses straight toward Hyri and the others. The goddess of war immediately leaps into action, slicing through pillar after pillar while loudly expressing her irritation toward demons. But even after unleashing one of her most powerful attacks, it still isn't enough. Hyri quickly realizes the terrifying truth. There may be no end to these things. As she cuts down another wave of skeletons, she tells Miria that she suspects a demon must be controlling them from somewhere. But before she can finish her sentence, she suddenly freezes. It feels like someone just stepped on her tail. And speaking of her tail, she immediately demands to know what our protagonist is doing with it. Meanwhile, our protagonist simply ignores her completely. In fact, he seems to find the fluffy tail extremely comfortable. This only makes Miria even more furious. Once again, she grabs him and throws him straight to the ground, swearing that this time she will definitely kill him. But Azras has been waiting for exactly this kind of opening. Seizing the moment, he launches a sneak attack. His bone technique, refined over thousands of years, is powerful enough to pierce through anything. With absolute confidence, he shouts for them to die. Unfortunately for him, Miria catches his scent immediately. With a cold glare, she comments that the foolish demon has finally decided to show himself. Azras only laughs in response and asks why she looks so angry. He then reveals something shocking. The demons have been toying with them this entire time. After all, if the Demon King truly wanted to destroy Hydrat, he could wipe it out in a single move. That statement alone is enough to push the goddess into a rage. She immediately lunges forward. But to her complete shock, her sword shatters the moment it collides with Azras's attack. For a brief moment, disbelief fills her eyes. And right then, our protagonist suddenly appears in front of her. At that moment, Miria realizes something absolutely bone-chilling. The strange scent she noticed earlier, the one she assumed was coming from Hyri, was never from Hyri at all. It has been coming from our protagonist the entire time. Meanwhile, our protagonist seems completely unfazed. Instead, he finds Azras's corpse-controlling technique rather interesting. After all, the Fuma clan possesses a very similar forbidden art, a technique known as summoning from the underworld. Before proceeding, our protagonist gives us some context about the Fuma clan's ninjutsu. Among the many ninja clans like the Iga, Koga, Saseki, Mochizuki, and finally Negoro, none have ever managed to reach the hidden realm. However, by constantly wandering along the thin border between life and death, a ninja can obtain the power to communicate with the dead. But gaining this ability isn't easy. To master such a technique, a ninja must endure insane training, and those who succeed often become monsters in their own right. In short, the Fuma clan's ninjutsu is said to be as vast as the spirits of the dead themselves. With this in mind, our protagonist begins summoning the sleeping souls of the battlefield. Letting drops of his blood fall onto the ground, he forms a blood oath demanding that every wandering soul come forth. This is the 12 forbidden arts of the Fuma clan. His blood acts as a gateway, and the being he summons rises straight from the underworld. Seeing this, Azras freezes on the spot. Miria and Hyri wear the same stunned expression. It's almost as if they already know who our protagonist has just summoned. Azras's attack is effortlessly stopped by the mysterious summon. And in that moment, as everyone watches in stunned silence, finally realizing the identity of the one our protagonist has called forth. That person is Sylvain, the previous demon lord who died more than 100 years ago. Naturally, anyone witnessing this would begin to question reality itself. After all, over a century ago, the Demon King was defeated by nothing short of a miracle. And now, without the presence of the old hero Arslad, Miria begins to fear the worst. However, to everyone's shock, Sylvain suddenly drops to his knees before our protagonist. He silently awaits his master's instructions. Our protagonist simply stares at him, completely confused. Even the war goddess is left in shock. Hyri already knows the terrifying potential behind our protagonist's ninjutsu, but bringing the Demon King back to life and forcing him to obey is something on an entirely different level. Even Azras can't believe what he's seeing. Forget capturing the child. This baby is a threat that must be eliminated immediately. With that thought, Azras moves. He immobilizes the Demon King and launches an attack using his indestructible bones. Unfortunately for him, a Demon King is still a Demon King. Sylvain stops Azras's attack with nothing more than a single finger. Azras freezes, still trying to process what just happened. Then Sylvain casually flicks his finger, calling him annoying. In the next instant, Azras is erased from existence. The Demon King's contract seal, the one meant to control him, instantly becomes meaningless. The power displayed proves something terrifying. It truly was a miracle that the hero and his party managed to defeat the Demon King in the past. Now, turning toward his master, Sylvain patiently awaits his next command. In response, our protagonist simply claps his hands, like a child who just saw fireworks for the first time. Meanwhile, Hyri struggles to believe what she just witnessed. One of the 10 demons was killed just like that. Even more shocking, our protagonist somehow turned the former Demon King into his subordinate. Miria reacts in utter disbelief, demanding to know who the hell that baby is. After all, Hyri previously mentioned that she was going to find the last hope of the world. Naturally, Miria begins to wonder if that baby is the one her friend was talking about. In response, Hyri confirms it without hesitation. With a bright smile, she proudly declares that our protagonist is the last hope of the world. For once, Miria is completely speechless. Meanwhile, Sylvain quietly takes the opportunity to observe his surroundings. His gaze sweeps across the battlefield. He casually remarks that although he doesn't know how much time has passed since his defeat, nothing seems to have changed, including Miria and her friend. The world remains exactly the same. Hearing that, Miria instantly grows furious. She roars back, blaming the demons for being the root cause of everything, and asks if Sylvain really thinks he has the right to sound disappointed. After a brief moment of silence, Sylvain calmly corrects her. According to him, humans are the real cause. He explains that the demon race had been suppressed for ages and labeled as enemies for reasons no one could even properly explain. Eventually, he simply grew tired of that sentiment. And as fate would have it, he happened to be born as the strongest demon, so he chose to resist. But now, none of that matters anymore. Trying to explain such things in a world full of fools is pointless. Now he assumes he will simply spend the rest of his existence as our protagonist's summon. But to everyone's surprise, our protagonist suddenly speaks his first words. More precisely, his first sentence. He tells Sylvain that he is free, and that he hates oppression. Those words leave everyone completely stunned. Miria looks at the baby with a puzzled expression before turning to Hyri, asking what he just said. As for Hyri, she can barely contain her excitement. Hearing our protagonist speak for the first time fills her with joy, and without wasting another second, she picks him up. Deep in her thoughts, she admits she feels exactly the same way. Meanwhile, Sylvain bursts into deep, hearty laughter. Apparently, there's always an odd one out in every group. In response, our protagonist stretches his tiny hand forward. Sylvain looks confused for a moment before quietly asking if the child wants him to join them. His cheerful expression makes it clear he wouldn't mind at all. But suddenly, the ground begins to tremble. Before anyone can react, the earth violently cracks open. Gigantic hands erupt from the ground. The massive hands rise high above the battlefield, stretching toward the sky. Our protagonist's group now stands in the palm of one of those enormous hands. While Hyri quickly checks on the baby, Miria looks around in confusion, wondering what could possibly be happening this time. At this point, the day has already delivered far too many surprises. Sylvain, on the other hand, simply watches in silence. Shadowy figures begin appearing at the tips of each giant finger. Soon the group realizes the truth. They are demons. Miria clicks her tongue in disgust, complaining about how much she hates the smell of demons. At the same time, she senses the magical power of the new Demon King. Even she never imagined he would be this powerful. Meanwhile, Hyri silently analyzes the situation. The appearance of the 10 demons can only mean one thing. They are determined to secure our protagonist. Her gaze then lands on one particular demon carrying a massive sword. For some reason, he feels strangely familiar. Breaking the tense silence, one of the demons suddenly bursts into laughter. He remarks that our protagonist killing both the 10th and 9th demon is quite impressive. After all, it has been decades since there was a vacant seat among the 10 demons. In fact, the Demon King himself is delighted that such an interesting diversion has appeared. Then Zenova, the third rank of the 10 demons, steps forward and demands that the group entertain them. Our protagonist clearly didn't expect reinforcements to arrive. Even worse, he's currently too weak to even move his body. As usual, Miria immediately grows furious at the word entertain. Feeling insulted, she clenches her fists and declares that she will kill Zenova first. But the moment she says that, a magic spell is cast. And just like that, Miria is struck by an attack that erases a portion of her body. She freezes in shock. The demon responsible, Deparu-Popper, mockingly tells her to get lost. They aren't interested in small fries. Furious, Miria demands to know what kind of magic he just used. But before she can react again, her body suddenly becomes petrified, trapped in what appears to be an ice-like spell. The demon admires the result like a work of art. He even suggests keeping Miria as another art piece. The one responsible is Hildark, the 7th rank demon. Meanwhile, Hyri watches everything unfold in shock. She stands frozen, unable to do anything. Then suddenly, a massive hand slams down on her, pinning her to the ground. As a result, she loses hold of our protagonist. Another demon appears beside her along with a familiar creature. She introduces herself as April, the 8th demon, and her familiar is called Galon. Coldly, she tells Hyri to sit still. Meanwhile, our protagonist tumbles across the ground and lands near Sylvain. As always, the former Demon King silently observes the situation. Another figure suddenly launches an attack at both of them. Sylvain notices instantly and blocks the strike with one hand. Recognition flashes in his eyes. He immediately realizes who the attacker is. To everyone's shock, the one attacking them is none other than the former hero Arslad, the very man who defeated the Demon King long ago. Seeing this, Hyri mutters his name in disbelief. She can't even begin to understand how the hero ended up becoming a demon. At that very moment, a hand suddenly emerges from a tear in space, catching Sylvain's attention. Stepping out from the distortion is the current Demon King, Jura. He casually greets Sylvain, as if the two of them have known each other for a very long time. Sylvain is caught off guard. For a moment he failed to sense Jura's presence. Meanwhile, Jura suddenly apologizes for touching him. He casually explains that his magic power is so overwhelming that anything he touches tends to break. But since Sylvain was once the Demon King, he assumed Sylvain would be able to handle it. Sylvain's expression stiffens. The spot where Jura touched him suddenly deforms, twisting into something grotesque. Watching from the side, Hyri feels a deep sense of dread. At this rate, everyone is going to die. Even though Sylvain is on their side, she realizes he doesn't stand a chance against the current Demon King. So she reaches a painful conclusion. The only thing she can do now is save our protagonist. At that very moment, Sylvain suddenly leaps into the air, gathering an enormous amount of magical energy. While airborne, he casts multiple highest-rank elemental spells and merges them into a single devastating attack. Hyri watches in shock. Even in her prime, she would never have been able to pull something like that off. As she reflects on Sylvain's earlier battle with Azras, something finally clicks in her mind. She remembers something Sylvain said 100 years ago. It was never explicitly mentioned in the narrative, but this display makes it painfully clear. Perhaps the real reason Sylvain lost back then was because he wanted to, just like Miria. Hyri now believes their victory back then was purely luck. The combined elemental attack crashes down on the battlefield, erasing and drastically altering the landscape. But to Servain's shock, Arslad and Jura remain standing. Not only are they alive, they barely received a scratch. Seeing Servain's stunned expression, Jura calmly acknowledges his strength. However, he then reveals a terrifying truth. No matter how powerful Servain may be, he will never be able to harm him, because Jura is no longer just a demon. He is a being that transcends demons. In other words, Jura is a demon god, and as a result, no magic attack can ever harm him. Hyrie instantly understands what that means. The only one who could possibly stand against the current Demon King is our protagonist. In desperation, she calls out to him. Exhausted, the baby struggles to move, frustrated by the weakness of his current body. Hyrie seems to read his thoughts. She pauses for a moment before revealing a small smile. At the same time, she tells him not to forget the emotions he felt just now. Our protagonist doesn't fully understand why she's saying this. But regardless, Hyrie quickly forms a plan. Knowing that he's the only one with even the slightest chance against the Demon King, she decides to save him even at the cost of her own strength. She casts a flash spell, creating a blinding burst of light that momentarily blinds Jura. Then she shouts, ordering Servain to flee with our protagonist. She believes that not only can the child stop the Demon King, but that he will also change their world. Without hesitation, Servain grabs the baby. Dark wings burst from his back. In the next instant, he shoots into the sky and disappears at the speed of sound. Moments after they leave, one of the demons complains loudly. She expresses her dissatisfaction, saying Servain and the baby ran away before she even had the chance to play. She is the sixth demon, Ramgris. Meanwhile, the fifth demon, Ignis, boasts about his incredible speed, claiming that capturing our protagonist should belong to him. But before he can move, Jura orders him to wait. The Demon King calmly reveals his plan. He intends to lure our protagonist to the demon side by using Hyrie and Myria as bait. Considering that the 10 demons now have vacant seats, turning them into tools isn't such a bad idea. Another demon suddenly bursts into laughter, clearly impressed by the Demon King's brilliance. This one happens to be the first demon. Surprisingly, it's a slime. Yes, the creature often considered the weakest monster holds the highest rank among the 10 demons. And perhaps, it is also the strongest of them all. The scene cuts to our protagonist and Servain after their escape. Our protagonist slowly wakes up and realizes that they are flying through the sky. As usual, he reacts with pure excitement. Servain notices immediately that the baby is awake. Kotaro gazes at the endless scenery in awe, marveling at the breathtaking view below them. In contrast, the former Demon King doesn't seem impressed at all. Still, our protagonist curiously asks how far this world extends and what lies beyond the horizon. Servain understands the curiosity. After all, the child is still a baby, but he casually responds that the world is actually quite boring. Kotaro immediately protests. He says he doesn't understand what Servain means because, to him, everything feels exciting. More importantly, he is free. Listening carefully to the way Kotaro speaks and recalling the mysterious technique that transcended the natural laws of their world, Servain reaches a startling conclusion. Our protagonist must be someone from another dimension. Even after being dead for over 100 years, Servain's mind remains incredibly sharp. With that realization, he decides to tell the boy more about their world. He explains that beyond the horizon lies the Dragon's Nest, a floating sky island so dangerous that even demons avoid approaching it. Below the world, on the other hand, lies the Abyss, a mysterious depth said to contain legendary equipment, ancient treasures, and terrifying creatures sleeping in the darkness. However, no one can confirm these rumors, because everyone who enters the Abyss never returns. Servain also mentions the existence of a world tree, a colossal tree that stretches far into the heavens. In truth, the world is so vast that even Servain himself has never managed to explore all of it. As for where they are heading now, Servain reveals their destination. He is taking Kotaro to the Tower of Time. Inside that tower, time itself can be manipulated. He chose that place because of Kotaro's current weakness. Kotaro immediately understands what Servain means. His biggest limitation right now is his body. Growing serious for a moment, the baby admits that he feels regret for not being able to save Hyrie and Myria. However, he confidently adds that nothing will happen to them. Servain naturally asks what he means, assuming that the two women must have already died. Kotaro shakes his head. He reveals that he overheard the demon's entire conversation before escaping. Servain nods in approval, clearly impressed. After flying for a while longer, they finally arrive at a tower floating high in the sky. Servain gently lands at the entrance. He then tells Kotaro that this is as far as he can go. Curious, Kotaro asks what Servain plans to do now. When the baby addresses him as Demon King, Servain's face shows a rare hint of embarrassment. Turning his face away slightly, he admits something unexpected. He says he has been influenced by Kotaro. Because of that, he asks the boy to stop calling him the Demon Lord. He has grown to hate the very idea of domination. From now on, he would rather be called simply by his name. With that said, Servain spreads his wings and prepares to leave. Kotaro happily waves goodbye, shouting that Servain should fly him around again whenever they meet next time. Just then, a mysterious figure appears behind him. The man seems surprised to see Servain acting so differently from the Demon King he once knew. It's clear that our protagonist has changed him. The figure calmly notes that he has been watching everything from inside the tower. He then invites Kotaro to come inside. Only then is it revealed. The mysterious figure is Bot, one of the 4 great heroes. Information about the Tower of Time is finally revealed. Originally, the tower wasn't located in the sky. In the past, countless people traveled to this place for a single reason: to regain their youth. Because of that, chaos soon followed. People began killing each other, launching invasions, and even starting wars just to seize control of the tower. To stop the bloodshed, Bot lifted the entire tower into the sky and became its guardian. While explaining all of this, our protagonist simply stands there staring at him the entire time. Bot continues speaking, revealing that he was given this duty by the hero Arslad after the Demon King was defeated. Since Bot does not have a natural lifespan, he was the perfect being to watch over the tower forever. But in the next moment, he realizes something. Our protagonist wasn't listening at all. Kotaro, seeing a Bot for the first time, assumes the strange figure is simply wearing a weird metal hat over his head. Annoyed, the Bot smacks him and angrily explains that this is his actual face. Finally, he properly introduces himself. His name is B28, the administrator of the Tower of Time. He also makes it clear that this is not a place anyone can casually enter. Because of that, our protagonist asks what he needs to do in order to go inside. B28 replies that it depends on him. But before he can even finish speaking, our protagonist somehow climbs on top of the robot's metal head and starts messing with him again. Later, Kotaro is finally taken inside the tower. Looking around, he asks B28 why everything inside is completely pitch black. Instead of giving any explanation, the robot simply wishes him good luck. The moment the door closes behind him, a magic circle appears beneath Kotaro's feet. Before he can even process what's happening, a blinding light erupts, and just like that, he is sent into the past. Our protagonist immediately recognizes the moment. This is a day he remembers all too well. The sight of it alone is enough to make his expression turn serious. It was the day meant to determine the next Fuma Kotaro, the leader of the Fuma clan. After a brutal bloodbath, only 2 participants remained. Whoever survived this final battle would automatically become the next leader of the clan. Back then, our protagonist surrendered. The female participant standing before him demanded to know what he was doing. In response, he simply told her that she was the one person he could never bring himself to kill. At first, it sounded like she might have been stronger than him, but the truth was much simpler. Our protagonist was just being merciful. Then suddenly, she vanished. In the next instant, she reappeared behind him, radiating pure killing intent. But our protagonist reacted immediately. In the end, he killed her. Surprisingly, the girl showed no regrets. Confused, our protagonist asked why she did it. She calmly reminded him of the truth. They were both ninjas, nameless blades who existed for nothing but killing. Those who cannot kill will eventually die themselves. Still, she admitted something strange. The person who had killed the least, the one whose heart remained untouched by murder, was actually the strongest of them all. She also confessed that she had been influenced by him. For a long time, she had secretly dreamed of being free. In other words, our protagonist had unknowingly killed the girl he loved. What a tragic life. Even now, Kotaro admits he never forgot the dream they once shared, but somewhere along the way, he abandoned it. Not because he wanted to, but because he believed it was impossible to reach. However, things are different now. This time he swears he will achieve freedom, not just for himself, but for both of them. The scene then shifts back to the present. B-28 walks into the room, clearly impressed. He explains that life itself is a battle against despair. Those who are crushed by it are swallowed by darkness. But those who face their deepest wounds and overcome them are the ones who deserve another chance at life. That is the true purpose of the Tower of Time. It was designed only for those who can confront and overcome their greatest scars. As the light fades, our protagonist stands there once more, now with his fully restored, powerful body. B-28 nods approvingly and comments that this outcome was expected. After all, he is someone Hyrie personally recognized. Our protagonist simply nods. Then, with unwavering determination, he says he's ready to go save her.